This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 9.2.10 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to describe the function of the heart. So let's just take an overview of what is called the cardiac cycle, what happens in the heart. So there's actually 3 sections to the cycle of the heart function, and we can see in this little chart what's happening in each of those sections. So let's just define what the term systole and diastole mean. So systole is the phase of the heartbeat when the heart muscle is contracting, and there's actually 2 contractions that happen that we're going to see how that happens in a minute. And diastole is the phase of the heartbeat when the heart muscle itself is relaxing. So when we see a heart monitor on a screen, there's actually 3 to 4 things that are happening that can be picked up by the sensors. So in what's called atrial systole, the atrium is contracting, which is point P on the graph. The ventricles are relaxed at this point, and blood is now flowing from the atrium to the ventricle. So our valves are opening and closing depending on what needs to happen. So the AV valve is going to open, the semilunar valve will be closed, will have already been closed at this point. Then we have ventricular systole. This is where the atrium is going to relax and the ventricle now is going to contract, and this is going to be points Q, R, and S on the graph. And this is going to go from the ventricle to the organs, either the lungs or the body tissue. So now our AV valve must be closed in order to prevent backflow, and the semilunar valve will have opened to allow the blood out. At this point now, everything in the heart needs to relax, just very briefly. The atrium is going to relax, the ventricle is going to relax, and we have some blood that's going to flow into the atrium. So this is where the atrium actually refills, coming from the lungs and from the body. The AV valves will open, the semilunar valves will be open, and then what's going to happen is the process is going to start all over again. So let's just take a look at the electrical system of the heart. All of these contractions and things that we've been talking about are all controlled actually by electrical impulses. So there are 2 nodes on the heart. One is at the top of one of the atriums called the sinoatrial node, and the other one is kind of in the center of the heart called the atrioventricular node. And so we can see how the electrical impulse is moving on the left animation. So the electrical impulse starts at the sinoatrial node, goes to the atrioventricular node, and then travels back up through the ventricular tissue. And that now is going to cause the muscular contractions that we see on the right hand animation. So we see that the atrium are contracting first, and then the ventricle contract afterwards. So the sinoatrial node is going to send out its electrical signal. The atrium are going to contract, then the AV node sends out an electrical signal to the ventricles, and the ventricles contract. So all of this muscular movement and contracting is going to force the valves, which are inside the heart, to open or close. So let's just go through the steps of the heart function one by one, so that way we understand what's happening at each stage. So in the first stage, the heart muscles are relaxed and blood is flowing in to the atrium. So the atrial muscles are relaxing, blood is flowing in, the semilunar valves are shut, the AV valves are open at this point. Number 2, the atrium are going to contract, the ventricles are going to be relaxed. So what's going to happen here is the atrium muscles contract and blood is pushed into the ventricles. So our AV valves, which are open, stay open so blood can move through. The semilunar valves are going to stay shut, and the valves which are at the top of the atrium, which has allowed blood to actually flow into the atrium, which you don't have to know those names at all, just that there are valves there, are forced shut by the contraction of the atrium. So it's actually the muscle movement that causes the valves to open and then snap shut again. And then in step 3, the ventricles are going to contract and blood is forced out. So the semilunar valves now are going to be forced open. The AV valves are going to be forced shut as the ventricle muscles contract and blood is pushed out. So those are the three basic steps of what is called the cardiac cycle.